Salam bachar, hoş omadit, and welcome to this Monday stream of Las Plumas de Simur. My name is Plumas, and I'm going to be with you for this whole session of reading and adventure. And a lot of endurance is coming this way because if you remember, things are not looking good for the Iranians. Thank you for joining me in this live stream of the Book of Kings. I've always said this, I mentioned this in every single reading aloud that we do, but this is my favorite stream, of everything I do, from the bottom of my heart. The reading of the Book of Kings is my favorite activity to do on Twitch because it is the reason I started my Twitch channel in the first place. So yeah, I really like it. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you had a very wonderful morning. Hello, Naim Salam, how are you? Hobby. So I'm really happy it's a favorite too. I honestly have a blast every time I read it because it's my favorite book. I don't know how many times I've read it complete, and maybe I prefer to watch it in Spanish. There's a different vibe to it. I completely agree. There's completely a different set for this, but you have to understand that I adapt to what I have. My English audience is not at all my Spanish audience. Sometimes my English audience tends to be a little bit shyer, if you may, like a little bit more shy. They do not participate as much, but I'm pretty sure they listen just as well. And it is different. It's really different. I do not compare. I don't think there's any good in comparing audiences because I do this for both of them. I do this for the Spanish speakers and for the English speakers, just for you to have a little corner on the internet you can go to whenever you feel like learning about the Book of Kings, reading with me the Book of Kings, or just listening to a reading aloud of the Book of Kings. And that's my tiny contribution to the spreading of Iranian culture throughout the world, which is fantastic. And yeah, my favorite thing to do, read the Book of Kings. Where were we? Because let me tell you, we have a lot ahead of us, and I think that reason is because sometimes in the English version the book is a bit hard for me. I understand this. It's not common. Like, oh, thank you for the post, Pichu. How are you? Salam. I understand the English in the Book of Kings is a little bit more elaborated, and I don't know if you were aware of this because I read aloud from the Book of Kings from the translation of Dick Davies. Yeah, however, I live translate when I'm reading it in Spanish, and I tend to do things a little bit simpler. But I'm just simpler because I am not a professional translator whatsoever. And translating is already difficult to do when you're not doing it live. So just imagine doing it in front of an audience. That is a little bit tricky. And I tend to not oversimplify because I do not think I oversimplify. But for sure, I cannot gather, or I cannot muster the perfect words or the words that would express exactly what an English word like. Is it a Spanish version of the Shāh-nāmeh, and is it good? So here's the thing. There's multiple translations of bits of the Shāh-nāmeh. By the way, hello sandwich, how are you, Hubi? There's multiple versions of tiny clips of the Shāh-nāmeh. The favorite one is the story of Rostam and Zol, especially Rostam and Sohrab. Is it good? I don't particularly like it, and no, not quite. It's not. I would recommend it, of course, and I do recommend it because, in my opinion, any approach to the Shāh-nāmeh in Spanish is an approach, and at least you're knowing about the book and you're learning about its characters. Yet, from the literature and the literary point of view, I do not think is the best translation because, Ferdowsi is not. His writing is not as convoluted as other authors tend to write. For example, Hafez is much more intricate in his words and in his poetry. Yet Ferdowsi, to me, Ferdowsi is my favorite because it conveys the perfect amount of beauty and then simplicity, because I do believe that simple is beauty. And when you're trying to tell a story that's 60 is long, you need to go to the point and reserve the poetry and the beauty for single moments. Then step up. I'm really afraid that I am not capable of doing such a massive task. My Persian lacks a lot a lot of skills to do that. I'm not even able to read the Shāh-nāmeh properly by myself in Persian. I always do it with help from others, from online sources, whatever. But I cannot read the Shāh-nāmeh by myself yet, let alone translate it entirely by myself. So thank you, and I'm really happy you like it. But also, there's another thing. There's actually a translation of this Shāh-nāmeh that's complete, but I've seen it only in the embassies because it was a book produced by Dr. Beatriz Salas in the University of Tehran. But it was never... I don't know what the intentions behind that translation was, because it was never... It seems like it was never intended to be sold. It was not created from a commercial point of view, if you know what I mean. These scripts that I'm talking about, these bits and bobs from the Shāh-nāmeh, you can purchase them in a bookshop in Spain, and you can read them, you can buy them. Yet the version from Dr. Salas is not... It's just not there. It was a present for the Cultural Council and the embassies. I think there's one in Argentina, I think there's one in Mexico, and I think there's one in Spain, and I've consulted it. My friends were not keen, if I'm honest completely. They were not like... They said it was okay, but they were not. And I'm talking about bilingual friends, like people that speak perfectly both Spanish and English. I'm really sorry, both Spanish and Persian. And they were not pleased with the work that was made in that adaptation of the Shāh-nāmeh. I haven't read it entirely. I just don't know. There is many differences between Khorasani and Iraqi poetry style in Persian. No, definitely. There's a lot of nuances and lower subtleties to it. Yet that's the reason I started translating it by myself using the version of Dick Davies, because I wanted my Bachar and people that just enjoy the Book of Kings and like Iranian culture to have access to the whole picture, not just the story of Zal and Sohrab, or not just the story of Rostam. I don't know. We know because of the titles how Hollywood films are We know because of the titles of Hollywood films that translations in Spain are not always accurate. In their defense, this was not made in Spain. This was made in Tehran. I don't know where Professor Salas is from. I guess she's Spanish. I just know. But that doesn't have, like, her nationality has nothing to do with it. I'm just talking. I'm giving out the perspective of professionals since I am not one. And I would love to get one copy, even if my Iranian / both Iranian and Spanish friends are not that happy with it. I would still love to get a copy, but I just don't know where could I purchase it. I really don't know. I don't know how to get one. I might have to phone my friends at the embassy and the Cultural Council in Madrid. We'll see. So that's enough of an introduction. We have a lot ahead of us today. And if you remember the 2 last streams, I am going to say this again. Things are not looking bright for the Iranians because Iran is under attack. Actually, the campaign from the Turkic tribes, the Turanians, they're kind of, they are getting the upper hand. They really are smashing the skulls and spirits of the Iranians. What is that sandwich? What you can do, translate specific parts of the Shāh-nāmeh, like the story of Zahak, Feridun, Rostam, and Sohrab. Still, I would have to do it from English. And I would be hesitant because I am not a translator. That's a profession. That's a job. And it's not mine. I have not been trained to translate anything. So for sure I could do it, but you would not ask me to operate your eyes because I'm not an eye surgeon. I could do it, perhaps, because I read 1 or 2 books of medicine, and with translation it happens the same. One thing is me being able to understand and comprehend the words in another language and move them to my own native language. The other way around, though, is just, it's one, I don't know. I don't want to step in anyone else's job or shoes. I don't want to say, oh, I could do a perfect translation of the Shāh-nāmeh or even the story of Zahak or Kaveh or Feridun. I could not, definitely not. It's a job that's really hard to be trained for. And although I have lovely friends that could do it, I'm pretty sure, but translating the Shāh-nāmeh is a ginormous task that I think you need to be committed to it for life. Honestly, it's just, wow, can't imagine. Woo. Anyway, so Pluma sells watermelons, but that is different. No, definitely, yeah, I do sell hendevane furu, man furusha hendevane. So yeah, so we are in the middle of a war, of a cruel and hard war, and the Iranians are losing, and they're losing quite dramatically, if I can say that. So the last bit that we read, Nozar, who is the current king, the king of kings in Iran at the minute, at this point in the book, he has been captured by Afrasiab and his troops. Qaren has fled to assist the Iranian womenfolk and the children to escape the hordes of very angry Turanians that are coming their way. And the last bit of it was that, I don't know if you remember, but Qaren fought a Turkish man named Barman, and he defeated him because he had killed his brother. So, all right, this is how the Shāh-nāmeh, this is the jam of the Shāh-nāmeh. So there was a man named Qobad. He fought in single combat a man named Barman. Barman won. Qobad passed away. He was killed. Then Qaren, Qobad's brother, wanted revenge, sought revenge, found revenge, and killed Barman. Now Bizet, who is the father of Barman, knows of this, and this is where we're going to start reading, because I don't know, I mean, honor killing is something that's judged by the eyes of the present. It's an awful activity that sometimes is still being done. And in the Shāh-nāmeh, it's really important. The cycles of revenge sometimes reach to a point of never ending, because one person murders another and that person wants to be avenged, and then another, and it's just it's a never-ending loop of killing, defeats, and monstrosity, if you actually ask me. But this is how it goes. It's just like at some point in time, until everyone's like, yeah, basically it's that. Yeah, it's basically the premise of the Shāh-nāmeh. So at some point in time, someone gets killed, and that gets the gears starting. This gets the system starting. So you killed my brother, prepare to die. Then the brother of the deceased person is like, oh, you killed my father, prepare to die. And then the son of the later is like, oh, you killed my cousin, you're prepared to die. And it's like, it doesn't really matter. It can travel for generations and for centuries and for families. And honest to everything, this is the source of many conflicts in the Shāh-nāmeh. Because if you recall properly, Tur and Salm murdered Iraj. And because they wanted to avenge Iraj, this was the reason the war between Iran and Turan started in the first place. So, yeah, enough of this. Let's just dive into the book already. So, Bizet finds out that his son is dead. So, Bizet set off with a detachment of soldiers, but before he caught up with Qaren, he saw his son sprawled dead on the battlefield and countless warriors of Turan lying there dead with him. So before pursuing Qaren to get his vengeance, this person decides to just go for a stroll on the battlefield. And what he contemplates, the image before his eyes, is horror. Not only his son is beheaded and mutilated and dead, as there are many soldiers of his army laying there with him. This is the part where Ferdowsi explains and shows the horrors of war. Even though warriors are encouraged to do their task and they're highly deemed in the Shāh-nāmeh, we are not without these pieces in which the author, the poet himself, highlights the horrors and the disaster that armed conflicts bring. And that's one of the things I really like about it. The banners of the Turanians were torn, the drums overturned, their shrouds were red as tulips, their faces vermilion with blood. Qaren learned that Visay was advancing against him. And after that image, if he already wanted to avenge his dead son, this has enraged and poisoned his heart even more. So Qaren sent a detachment of his men on Arab horses to Zabulistan, where Zal is. And with the rest, he went out from Pars onto the plain, illuminating the world with his splendor, because Qaren is one of the good guys. To his left, he saw an army approaching, and a black banner emerged from the dust. At the head of the troops, he saw Visay, the Turkish commander. The two armies drew up their ranks and advanced on one another. And from the center of his men, Visay called out, "The wind has swept away your crown and your great throne, all the lands from Kanush to the borders of Sabulistan, and from there to Bost and Kabul, are now in our hands. It is our portraits that are painted on the walls of their castles. Where will you find a resting place now that your king has been captured?" Something that Qaren does not know, by the way. It's like, this is the way, the very boasty and, how to explain this in a nice manner and still keep it classy. This is the boastful way, the showing off way that Visay has to tell Qaren that they are being massacred and defeated. They took their castles, they painted the portraits on the walls. The armies are practically exterminated, so there's very little places they can run for cover now and for shelter. But Qaren replies, "I am Qaren, and water will not wash away my progress. I did not leave out of fear or because of rumors. I fought with your son, and now that you are looking to avenge his death, I shall fight with you." Because I don't know why. Honestly, I was going to say something, but at this point, I promise, at this point, there's not much I could add. Just like, do you really think this is a good choice, Qaren? Are you really, really? Each to their own. The left and right flanks of the armies went forward, and the sun and moon were dimmed by dust. The armies clashed, and a river of blood flowed across the ground. Qaren's forces prevailed over Visay's, and Visay turned back from the battle. Many of his men were killed when he fled, but Qaren did not pursue him. Visay made his way back to Afrasiab, weeping for his son's death. So here we have actually something that is interesting to analyze, because the Iranians defeat the army of the Turanians that were chasing them. Yet, Visay, when he's run away, is not chased by Qaren. Why is that? Because Qaren has already had his share of vengeance. He's content. He's done what he ought to do. That was avenging his brother's death. But he does not wish to kill Visay if he's running away, because he doesn't have a reason to. He already killed his son, and I am guessing, because that's my opinion only, I'm guessing saving the Iranian womenfolk is more important than actually pursuing this commander and behead him, because I'm pretty sure if he has to be killed, he's going to be beheaded. Oh yeah. And now we have the people from Arman, led by Shāh-nāmeh, and these people were the people that Afrasiab had sent against Zabulistan. Shāh-nāmeh and Khasbaran, and the commander, led 30,000 warlike troops across the Oxus and marched with their swords and maces as far as the river Hirmand. At this time, Zal was in mourning and building a tomb for his father, and Mehrab was diligently carrying out the functions of government for him. Do you remember the last time Zal and his father parted ways? Some actually said goodbye to him in a very definite way. And he explained to you that Zam knows that after he goes to help Nozar and goes away again, he will die because all of his colleagues and friends have already passed away. So here, we do not witness the death of Zam, yet we know about it. We learn about it when Zol is not on the battlefield. He cannot defend Zabulistan because he's affected by the death of his father, which really though, I'm not wishing death to anybody, but Zam is not one to cry over. I'm really sorry, he's not. That's in Spanish name, Junior. You can do that on Thursday though. So anyway, if Zal wants to cry over this awful man, let him do. And yeah. It's really cold out here, so this actually helps a lot. Why is that Baisem? Khodafis. So Zal sent an envoy. No, who's Zal? Oh, yeah, the plot thickens. Do you remember Zal's father-in-law, Mehrab? Do you remember he was not exactly the sharpest knife in the box? And do you remember that he was not exactly the most virtuous man alive on earth? And that at some point he claimed that neither Zal or Sam were worth of anything. And it corresponded to him and Rostam to be the actual rulers of Iran. Do you remember that? There was an episode, we read this a while ago. So Sam and Zal were celebrating the birth of Rostam, and they invited Mehrab over, and Mehrab was a little bit, had one or two glasses overdue, and he started saying all those things about them not being worth of the throne. And he just dropped that. He just let it sink in there. I'm leaving this here for it to soak. And we're going to come back to this in a couple of episodes. And in fact, we have. So basically, now that the Shāh-nāmeh, the Turanian commander, is approaching, Mehrab sends an envoy because apparently he has nothing else to do. And this is the message he sends over. May the commander of Turan's army wear the crown of sovereignty forever. Really though? Te falta tiempo, as we say in Spanish. I don't know how to translate that. Oh no. I am descended from the Arab king Zahak, and I have not great love for Zal's rule. I allied myself with this family because I had no choice in order to preserve my life. You liar. Liar. Big fat liar. Anyway, now this castle is the center of my power and all Zabolistan is in my hands. Not quite, but he does believe so. Zal is in mourning for his father and my heart is cheered by his grief. That is a very nasty thing to say, don't you think? You're nasty? That is a very bad person in it. I would be happy if I never saw his face again. Well, excuse you. No one speaks ill of my favorite prince. No one speaks ill of the son of Simuri herself. Watch your words, Mehrab. Azizam. Give me the time and let me send a messenger to Afrashab so that he can know the secrets of my heart and in this way silence those who speak against me. I shall send him appropriate gifts, whatever is fitting for a king, and if he orders me to appear before him, I shall stand before his throne, ready to serve him. You worm. I was going to say snake, but snakes are highly regarded in my own soul, so I'm not going to compare that beautiful animal with this disgusting person. I shall hand over my sovereignty to him, and my heart will be content with his approval. I shall send him the wealth I have accumulated and cause no trouble for his warriors. First thing, all right, let's just rub this up for a moment. Every time he talks, the price of bread rises. Exactly. Yeah. So, dear Mehrab, that fortune you say you've accumulated is not yours. Because last time I checked, the king of Zabolistan was Zal, not you. You're just covering up because he's mourning his father. You are disgusting enough to enjoy and rejoice in the sadness of losing a father, a family member. We all agree that Sam was not, he was not a contestant in the career for the greatest father award. Yes, because he's not, I don't like Sam either yet. It is really poor, speaks poorly of a person if you rejoice in the loss of a family member. You nasty bastard. That's what on the one hand. Second, it really it took nothing for you to surrender the entire kingdom to the Turanians because you're still salty. You feel a little bit resentful towards Sam and Zal because they imposed the sovereignty over you. They did not. Zal fell in love with your daughter. And you agreed to this. Oh. The audacity. That's the only thing I'm going to say. The audacity. Anywho. So, Mehrab, with these coated with honey words, he snared the Turanian warrior's heart, while at the same time he sought for a way to escape from the threat they presented. I am all up for survival, and I understand sometimes you ought to make decisions in order to preserve your physical integrity, but this is too much. It's a little bit too much. He sent an envoy to Zal, saying, "Fly as quickly as a bird, open your wings. Tell Zal that..." I'm really sorry, I need to start over. I'm angry. He says to the envoy, "Fly as quickly as a bird, open your wings. Tell Zal what you have seen and tell him to lose no time in getting here." What are you doing, Mehrab? What is it exactly? You sick? Are you one of these people that just want to see the world burn around them? Is that what you want? Bless you, my neighbor just sneezed. Did you hear that? You shouldn't have, but it was a very pretty loud sneeze. Tell Zal what you have seen and tell him to lose no time in getting here. Say that 2 champions like leopards have come here from Turan to make war on us. You're surrendering the castle. What war were you talking about? The army is encamped on the banks of the Hermond, and so far the gold I have bribbled them with, has tangled their feet and impeded their progress. But if you delay in your response, our enemies will achieve what they desire. Is this strategy, though? Is Mehrab a genius? Or is Mehrab a great coward? You decide for me. The envoy reached Zal, whose heart flared up like fire at the news. No wonder. He set off with his army to join Mehrab, and when he saw Mehrab and considered how prudently he had acted, he said prudently. He was going to give them the keys to the castle. Like, here you have it. The front door, the back door, the side door, the door to the secret door. Anyway, Zal's too good. He's too good. He never thinks poorly of other people. He sees the good in people's hearts. I'm not like him. Let's be all like Zal. I can't. Dear Mehrab, your mother was a hamster and your father smelled of elderberries. If only they would have used that. Where am I? Oh yeah. Zal said to himself, "Why should I fear Turan's army?" That was a very Spanish army. "What's this Hasbaran to me? No more than a fistful of dirt." My boy. He said to Mehrab, "You have acted wisely, and they applaud all you've done. Now in the darkness of the night, I shall go and show them what I'm capable of. They will know soon enough that I have returned, and that my heart longs to fight against them. Go, Zal. You go." Zal slung a bow over his shoulder, and each of the arrows he took was as massive as the bough of a tree. Azizam, you're strong. He spied out the enemy encampment and then shot the arrows into 3 different areas of the camp. Uproar ensued, and when night turned to day, the troops gathered around the arrows. They said, "These arrows must be Zal's, since no brute force but his could match them to the bow." So imagine, do you even know that? Can you picture the bow of a tree? Let me see if I can show you. All right, so it's a very big branch. All right, like a sturdy, chunky, big branch, and he shot 3 of those as if they were regular arrows. So it's a big thing. Hello, no soy Rose. It's a big thing, and I really I smile over this because they say no brute force but his could match them to the bow. So it's like, still at work. Got you the background. Hello, Vizia. Thank you for listening to us when in the background. So basically, Zal, what he has done is just sending a warning, saying, "I'm here, I'm ready to fight, and I am as strong as throw bows of trees as if they were arrows." So, caution. That's the caution I advise. Shāh-nāmeh said, "Khazbaran, if you had not been so eager for wealth, there would be no Mehrab left by now, no army, no more treasure to plunder, and no Zal to terrify you like this." So I really like this scene because they're arguing. Basically, Shāh-nāmeh thinks that they should have not stopped in ravaging and destroying Zabulistan and Kabul. Then Khazbaran believes that they did the right thing because they acquire a lot of money and wealth. Hello, Christian. And then Khazbaran replied, "He is one man. He's not Ahriman, and he's not made of iron. Don't worry about fighting him. I'll deal with him when I find him." It's like this could be a good couple. Shāh-nāmeh and Khazbaran. Okay, do I ship them? I think I do. Yeah, they could be a nice marriage. When the shining sun began to climb in the sky, the din of drums rang out on the plain. Within the city could be heard drums and trumpets, as well as the clashing of cymbals and Indian chimes. They have a concert going on. The armies are about to meet. Zal led his men onto the plain, together with their tents and elephants. Rank upon rank gathered there, and from a distance the dust sent up made the plain look like a black mountain. Khazbaran armed his mace and plate shattered. Zal turned back, and the warriors from Kabul followed him. Oh, is it not on the Kharana one? It should be. Wait. Let me fix this. Yes, I mean, we are going to the Kharana, like, just head first. All right, should work now. You can try again if you want. No sé, Ros. Oh, yeah. Khazbaran armed his mace and his plates shattered. Zal turned back, and the warriors from Kabul followed him. He donned new armor and returned to the fray like a lion. His father's mace was in his hand. His head was filled with fury, and blood welled in his heart. He brought his ox-headed mace down on Khazbaran's head, and the ground was spotted with his blood, like a leopard's hide. Ooh. Zal flung him down and left him with sprawlers. Zal flung him down and let him sprawl it lifeless, then went onto the plain between the two armies. So basically, he smashed an ox-headed mace in his opponent's head. And the poem takes some words to explain how the blood out of the skull splattered onto the plain and make the earth look like a leopard's skin. Spotted. Ain't that graphic? That men have a thing with maces. This is something I actually like that you point out, No Soy Ros, because when we think about the antiquity, and because of the image inherited to us by novels, comics, films, and series, normally our preferred weapon when we are trying to portray an ancient warrior in our heads is the sword. Yet, it was not the most popular one. As you can see, the bow is much more popular in Iran. The spear is much more popular than the sword in Iran. And finally, most importantly, the mace. The mace is much more effective. It was widely used, and I really like this because it shows, it explains it to us. Not many swords on the horizon, like on the dark, it's on the, oh, why is this on? Why is this time on? And she'll not be like, oh no, okay, come on, stop it. Like, just don't. The commands are activated in English, but it's like, oh, this is a disaster. What is that, Christian? The sword is difficult to make and more difficult to use than a mace or an axe. Truth be told, they have swords in Iran, but they are for parading purposes. Because we have many swords in Iran, but they are not as effective. Let's Sahak on the efficiency of the masters. As is that my pause arc. So yeah, when you think about Iranians and Iranian ancient warriors, the mace, the ox-headed mace. Oof. Then Zal flung him down and he went onto the plane between the two armies because my boy is so ready to do this. He called out for Shāh-nāmeh. He's already defeated Khazbaran at like the blink of an eye. And then he shouts, "Come out and fight. The man who daren't come out has no heart for a fight." He's like, he's provoking a sentiment, like brawling. He's trying to cause a brawl. But when Shāh-nāmeh saw Zal's mace, he hid himself away among his troops because he's a coward, and the poem has no shame on pointing it out. In the dust of the battle, Zal came on Gulbad, encased in armor. He fitted an arrow to his bow, and it struck Gulbad's waist, piercing his body armor and pinning Gulbad to the saddle. Jesus. So basically, this is not Peggy, okay? This is PG-R rated. So basically, he shoots at his opponent in such a strong manner, and his draw is so powerful that the arrow pierces the armor, traverses the flesh, and pins the body of a grown-up man to his saddle. Oof. That shit hurts. The army watched in horror, and Shāh-nāmeh in particular lost heart, and his face turned sallow. Shāh-nāmeh and his troops fled in disorder, and Zal and Mehrab came after them in hot pursuit. So this is what my boy Zal does. He just arrives, creates a commotion, destroys the morale of the troops, and leaves. Oh God. So this is one of the ways that the poem has of explaining how brutal Zal actually is. Because this is not something everyone would have done. Zal is, he was brought up in the wilderness in the company of the Pari, of the Div, of the Ishdaha, which are the dragons. So he fights like one. Sometimes his manners are not human when he fights, because after all, he's a child of the supernatural. Keep that in mind when you think of Zal, if you may. Oh God. So many men were killed that it seemed there was no earth left for the soldiers to tread upon. And the Turkish troops flung down the armor and fled towards their king, so they are retreating. When Shāh-nāmeh reached the desert, Qaren, Kaveh's son, appeared in the distance. "Did you miss me?" He was returning from his encounter with the troop of Bise, whose son he had killed with such contempt. Qaren realized how he was facing and why they had come to Zabulistan. He had the trumpet sounded and the two armies came face to face. So basically between Zal coming this way and Karen coming this way, they're going to make a sandwich of Turanians. Like, that was a very graphic image. I apologize. I should have not said that. He had the trumpet sounded and the two armies came face to face. Thus obscured the sun, as many of Shāh-nāmeh's men were wounded and others taken prisoner. Shāh-nāmeh escaped with a few men, fleeing from the dust of the battle. Afrasiab, who's not going to be happy about this, learned of the death of his chieftains, his heart filled with the fire of grief and his cheeks were stained with tears. He sprang up in anger and said, "Where is Nozar? Visay can take his revenge on him." That's cold-blooded murder, and that's not nice. When Nozar heard this, he knew that his days were numbered. A group with Turks zip. Oh God! Why am I laughing at that? It's actually pretty fun. Oh God! Yeah. No, it's good. It's so good. Good job. When Nozar heard this, he knew that his days were numbered. A group of soldiers came gossiping and shouting to find him and dragged him with his arms bound in front of Afrasiab. As soon as he saw Nozar approaching, Afrasiab thought of his ancestors and of his desire to avenge their humiliation. He said to Nozar, "You deserve whatever evil comes to you," and called for a sword. He severed King Nozar's head with a blow to his neck and flung his lifeless body to the ground. So perished Manusher's heir, and the throne of Iran remained empty. The captives were dragged in, and they pleaded for their lives. Agriros, who is Afrasiab's older brother and the only Turanian with one neuron doing their job up here in the head, came forward to intervene on their behalf and began to argue with Afrasiab. I like Agriros. He said, "To kill so many unarmed captives is not a noble act, but a base one. It would be better if they were not harmed. Hand them over in chains to me, and I'll imprison them in a cave and have them well guarded. They will die wretchedly there, but you should not share their blood." Afrasiab responded to his brother's request and handed the prisoners over to him. They were taken weeping and wailing away. Taking them away. So Agriras, he still wants the Iranians to be captive, but he wants to prevent, as I said before, a cold-blooded massive murder by his younger brother. Just remember, Afrasiab is not good up in the head. And since the throne of Iran is empty, what do you think? Someone should occupy it. Shouldn't them? Afrasiab made all speeds from Dehestan to Rey, his horses sweating with exhaustion. There, he placed a Khaganate crown on his head and held open court, distributing gold coins. Goshtaham and Tuz, his children, received news that the glory of the imperial crown had dimmed and that the king's head had been severed with sharp sword. Goshtam and Tuz are the kids of Nozar. Do you remember they were away trying to help their mom and their sisters? So now they know they don't have a dad anymore. Oof. They tore out their hair and clawed at their faces, and lamentation was heard throughout Iran. These chieftains' heads were smeared with dust, the eyes were filled with tears, and their clothes torn. This is a little bit, we can think about this as a bit overdramatic, but this is the way of expressing the most painful and deep sorrow by the characters in the poem. Throwing dust to their eyes is a symbol of denial, of not wanting to see the fatality that has made them pray. Then they tear the beautiful clothes, which is something that, if you are from Spain, you know this in the local folklore. You know, tearing down your own clothes in a sign of pain and deep agony is something that is done also. And then, you know, crying, of course, and even just picking cloaks of hair and, you know, pulling them out of your head in expressing a terrible, terrible sentiment. I come out of, yeah, but in a sad way, unfortunately. And what these orphan kids do is going to Zal, because they have nowhere else to go. And they go to Zal, and they go mourning and crying, and they say, when they reach Zal, Zal welcomes them in his palace and says, "Alas for Nozar and his bravery, his might, his crown, his magnanimity. Protector of Iran, prop of the state, king of the world, most glorious of the great, scion of Fareydun, of unmuch worth, whose horses' hoofs subdued the wailing earth. We will dip our swords in poison and avenge his unjust death, relentless in revenge. The heavens weep to see our wretched fate, and you must put aside your robe of state to mourn beside us, to lament and keep this vigil with us while we grieve and weep." And the whole company joined them in their weeping, groaning as if they were burning in fire. Then Zal said, "Until the day of judgment, my sword shall not see its scabbard. My horse beneath me will be my throne. My feet will be nowhere but in the stirrups, and my crown will be my helmet. I shall not sleep or rest until I have taken my revenge. The rivers flow with less water than my eyes flow with tears." That's such a beautiful yet painful sentence, isn't it? I really like it as a symbol of how much actually Zal is crying. "I shall not sleep or rest until I have taken my revenge. The rivers flow with less water than my eyes flow with tears." It's beautiful and yet is very, very painful and sad. "May the king's soul be resplendent among his glorious peers, and may you comfort yourselves with the knowledge of God's justice, so that your hearts find peace. We are all born for death. We belong to death, and we have given our heads into its keeping." So, once more, in the Shāh-nāmeh, when someone mourns and when someone confronts death, there is this reflection, there is this commemoration about the inevitability of death and the feeling that we cannot avoid something we've come to this world to do, which is finally, finally perish. And by saying this is something nowadays, I actually want to talk about this for a minute, because this is something today we would not do. If we want to console someone that has just lost a family member, we would just not say, "Oh, you know, we all die. Happens." This has gained terrible connotations in nowadays current Western society. Yet what Zal is doing is not rejoicing in the fact that we are all going to die. And he does not want to shake anything off. He's reminding the kids that we are not our own owners, so to speak. We are not to decide what we do with our lives, because remember, this is a monotheistic book. It was written by a Muslim author, and Muslim it remains. Here, when they explain the greater plan that God has for us, they want to highlight that eventually we will all pass away and we will join everyone else in the eternal life. And why is that? Because it's a console. It's kind of a balsam to the soul to hear this, in the sense that, first of all, your family member is now in a better place, if you believe this. And second, because it's just our destiny. It's just how things go and function. In this context, in the context of the Shāh-nāmeh, what they say is not to fear, not to weep, because we have blindly put ourselves into God's greater plans, and they shall know better. If you loved your father now, it's because it was inserted in God's greater plan. And and basically we will all join your father sometime, like especially in this moment that Zol has recently lost his own father, so he can't understand better what these two kids are going through. And I really want you to reflect upon this first because I think it's beautiful. Second, because it shows us a different way of understanding death and passing away. Because today in our society, we have a completely different approach to it. I'm not saying it's worse. I'm not saying it's better. It's just different. It's just evolved and it's different. And I like seeing all the points of view. It's something I really enjoy. And I just think it's worth the mention. So news reached the Iranian captives. They are in a place called Sari. News reached the Iranian captives that Zol and his companions... Sorry, a bit of water here. Much better. Zol and his companions were preparing to attack. They were disturbed by this. Thank you, Pichu. I will. There you have it. This is the best thing I purchased in 2021. And yes, I'm very happy with it. They were disturbed by this, and in their anxiety, they could not get eating or sleeping. They were afraid of what Afrasiab would do, and they sent a message to Agriras, the brother, saying, "You are a great lord, famed for your goodness, and we live only because of your words. Remember that Agriras has not exactly saved the Iranians, but he has bought them some time." Oh, Agriras, Aziza. We are all your slaves. You know that in Zabolistan, Zol reigns and that the king of Kabul is with him there, together with other warriors like Barzin, Qaren, Khartat, and Keshbad. Different characters, different warriors. The destroyer of armies are with them. These are great heroes who will not hesitate to use their strength in Iran's defense, and when they ride out to war, they can pierce a man's eye with a lance thrust. Afrasiab will be infuriated by their attacks, and he will turn his anger on his prisoners. For the sake of his crown, he will have all our heads roll in the dust, even though we are innocent of any crime. If Agriras would agree to set us free, we shall scatter throughout the world, and we shall praise him before chieftains and nobles, and pray that God protect him. Oh my God. They are pleading Afrasiab to be saved. But Agriras, the wise Agriras replied, "I cannot do this. My enmity toward the king will be plain, and that Ahriman will be enraged with me. But I shall try to help you in another way, one which will not provoke my brother. If Zol attacks, when he comes close to Sari, I shall hand you over to him, and then evacuate Amur without fighting, and so bring shame on my head." But Shah, this is huge. This is so huge what Agriras is agreeing to do. He knows he cannot just free the Iranians, because that will anger his brother, and possibly he would say Afrasiab. Okay, Afrasiab is a psychopath, so probably he will have his brother tortured and killed, and then he will send all the soldiers to pursue the runways to kill them in the most painful and convoluted way that you can gather in your head. So, Agriras, he is agreeing to bring shame to his own person, which is a big deal in the Shāh-nāmeh. He's gonna stain his name and his reputation in order to save the Iranians. He's just going to hand them over to Zol. He's not going to oppose any resistance. He's just going to hand over to Zol also the conquered territories he is in charge of at the minute. And he's going to return. He's going to do nothing but sitting back and letting the Iranians save their people. This is such a big thing. Exactly. He's just agreeing willingly, freely and willingly, he's being dishonored by him saving the Iranians. The Iranian nobles bow their faces to the ground, and when they have expressed their gratitude to him, they send an envoy from Sari with a message to Zal. Wow, the sacrifice he's making. I'm highlighting this, but I want you to acknowledge the sacrifice Agridas is just about to make. Because he let the Iranians send an envoy explaining the plan, so that everything would happen accordingly and they can all survive and be free. You can start imagining what is going to come of Agridas now, can't you? The message said, God has been merciful to us. The wise Agridas has become our ally. He swears that if 2 men come here as Zol representatives from Iran, he will not fight, but evacuate the area and lead his army to Rey. If this isn't done, not one of us will escape from the claws of that dragon. That's a very Spanish way of saying it. That dragon, Afro-Shia. When the message was read to Zal, he said, Now, my warlike leopards, which of you, whose heart is blackened by a war, will undertake this mission and so raise his head to the sun? Keshvat slapped his hand to his chest and said, I am prepared to do this. Zal called down blessings on him and said, May you live happily for as long as the sun and moon exist. How beautiful is that? Can we say that now? You know, to our beloved people, to our friends, our family, our loved ones. May you live happily for as long as the sun and moon exist. I love this book so much. So much. Oh my God. An army set off from Zabolistan to Amol, and news of this reached Agridas, who had the brazen trumpet blown and led his men toward Rey, leaving all the prisoners behind. When Keshvat reached Sari, he freed them and gave each of them a horse, and the group set off on his journey from Amol to Zabolistan. At the news of Keshvat's return in triumph, Zal distributed money to the poor and gave the messenger one of his own robes. Zal went out to welcome Keshvat, as was appropriate, and wept over the captives who had escaped from the lion's clutches. This is such a moving moment. Like, in the cruelty of war, there is still place for a little bit of kindness. And that kindness is represented by the tiny, shy, but timid, but still resistant flame that is Agrida's heart. That is not going to last much, I'm afraid. When Agridas arrived in Rey from Amol, Afrasiab learned what he had done and said to him, What do you think you're up to? Mixing honey and bitter colors in like this? I told you to kill them. And that this was no time for cautions or high-mindedness. It is not for a warrior to worry about wisdom. That's not what brings him glory on the battlefield. In a fighting spirit and wisdom have nothing to do with each other. Wow. So Afrashab, he would rather be a brainless brute than an educated, not so fit for the battle person. Wow. Agnidas replied, A little shame and sense of honor are not out of place. Whenever you think of acting evilly, fear God and do not harm to anyone. The crown and royal belt have seen many like you, but they stay in no one's possession for long. The king sprang up like a maddened elephant, and for an answer, drew his sword. And then this faithless fool slashed his brother into with a blow to the waist. He just cut his own brother in 2 halves by the waist. Like, wow. I'm really oof. Yeah, he cut the body. He drew a blow to the waist, to the belly, and slashed his brother, and cut. He cut open the belly and separated one half, like the upper half of the body from the bottom, like the lower half, like just. He split his own brother's body in 2. Why? Because he's a psychopath. He's a psychopath. And Zol heard about what had happened to Agriras and said, his good fortune grows dim and his throne desolate. He had the brazen trumpets blown and drums strapped onto his war elephant, and he drew up his army that glittered as splendid as a rooster's eye. He led his men toward Pars, seething with anger as he marched. So now, as if Zal had not enough motives to be enraged, he wants to kind of bring honor to Agriras' death and sacrifice. And he's just disgusted, terribly disgusted at Afrasiab's behavior, because that's a monster, that's not a person. From sea to the plains were filled with men, and the faces of the sun and moon were obscured by dust. Do you see how they are? They're recurrent phrases, They're recurrent verses that evoke. It's not that Ferdowsi couldn't come up with anything else. It's just, it is that, how to explain this? It's a little bit complicated. They are tropes. They are tropes to evoke the feelings of a battle, for example, of sentiment. They are ways of explaining it that are very well established in Iranian poetry, and this is one of them. I hope Ferdowsi has such an ending to you, Psycho, like others. Then decided to kill your own brother. It's awful. When Afrasiab learned that Zal had mobilized his forces, he prepared for the defense of Rey. The advanced troops of the 2 armies fought day and night, and many warriors and chieftains were killed on both sides. One night, Zal talked at length about Afrasiab and his own warriors' battles and those of his allies. He said, if a king is to be fortunate and his soul to be luminous, he must be of royal lineage, and also he must be someone who is aware of tradition and the past. The army is like a ship, and the king on his throne is both the wind and the ship's pilot. Although both Gostam and Tus are fine warriors, neither is worthy of the crown and throne. We need a king who is fortunate, who is endowed with the divine far and wisdom. They searched among Fereydun's descendants for someone who would be worthy of the throne. They could find no one but Zab, the son of Tahmasp, to renew the glories of Fereydun's crown. Qaren, together with priests and the laws of the marches, took the good news to him that he would inherit the crown, since Zal and all the army wished him to be the king. Zab accepted their choice and took his place on the throne. Bye, name. Sorry, I didn't see that. Thank you for joining us. So here, all right, we're going to finish with this. And here are very interesting thoughts from Zal's speech. He said, first of all, that a king should be of royal lineage. Point number 1. And second, that he must be aware of tradition and the past. He must be someone that respects tradition, because that is very important. Learning from the past, knowing where we go to. And finally, although Gostam and Tus are of royal lineage, because they are the sons of Nozar and descendants of Fereydun, they do not quite make the cut. What is Ferdowsi saying here, actually? So, you know how the Shāh-nāmeh is a powerful tool to legitimate power. When Ferdowsi finished writing the Shāh-nāmeh in 1010, he was doing so for a foreign, foreign, emphasis on the quotes, foreign empire, who were the Ghaznavids. And he just leaves tiny droplets of thought, because he believes, his personal belief was, that even though there was some royal lineage, and yes, the sovereign Mahmud of Ghazna was sure of, he had royal blood in his veins, yet he was not entirely Iranian, because he did not know of the past. He did not know he was not a descendant from this imagined, because it was a fiction, imagined glorious Iranian past that all the kings would draw from. Why am I saying imagined? Because the sentiment of nostalgia and the sentiment of we come from a better place that was in the past, and in the past we were magnificent, and now in our darkest hour we shall remember that and endure through the memory of those great people that precede us, and kind of take pride of being their descendants. That is a recurring message in the Shāh-nāmeh. Believe me, you're gonna see this very often. At some point, someone explains that the importance of royal blood is nothing without tradition and the past. The knowledge of the past it's what really makes a person worth of ruling upon. In this case, Iran, but you're gonna see mention this in another parts. Actually, if you go back to all the sections of the poem, you can see how that is mentioned again. The importance of the past, the importance of tradition, as something that is required to be a proper ruler. That happens nowadays too in our society, especially on Twitter. I don't know if I follow what you want to say. If you could elaborate a little bit more, that would be. I don't know if I'm following yet. What happens in the Shāh-nāmeh as the epic poem that is, the whole poem, people are nostalgic about the empire. Which empire? Which one? Oh, are you talking about Spanish historiography? I'm not going to open that door. We shall close it and put 7 logs on it and then throw it into the depths of the sea. Moving on and going back to the Shāh-nāmeh. And the Shāh-nāmeh, which is a product, do not forget this, Bachar. Do not forget this. The Shāh-nāmeh is not innocent. It's a product. It's a product of cultural legitimacy to react to a foreign entity, which is external cultures that were being brought to Iran. This was seen under the lens of Ferdowsi's glasses. I'm pretty sure he wore glasses at some point. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack in here, and there are a lot of interesting topics that we could pull the thread and continue talking about. But we've done this for enough time. I think that is about time that we finish our reading, and maybe next time that we continue reading the Shāh-nāmeh, we can expand a little bit on this if you shall be interested. I don't want you to blub over, just to discuss over things that you're not interested about. Do let me know if you'd like a little bit of comment on this, because I think it's really, in all the countries they boy Abbas. Yes, they do. So, thank you for accompanying me in this another episode of the reading of the Book of Kings. Thank you so much for coming with me. We always want comments. That is very sweet. Thank you, Pichu. Thank you for joining me in this magnificent activity that is reading the Book of Kings, and the one that I sure enjoy the most. Thank you so much to my patrons, especially my tier Murshid and my tier Ashdod, because I wouldn't be here without them. If you want to get access to, like behind the scenes content, extra content, our own Discord server, you can support me on Patreon, patreon.com/letsbloom and there is I will play out a while. Yeah, I'm actually playing. I'm playing Spider-Man at the minute. I'm actually very much like into it. But maybe later, I don't know. Perhaps it could be. Thank you. When your stream starts, in the moment the one that says, "Oh, Azizam." Thank you so much. I'm really happy you liked it, and thank you for accompanying me. I'm hoping I met you Monday just a teensy bit better. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you want, we can see each other again next Monday at the same time, 7 p.m. if you live in Central Europe, Central European time. And if not, is GMT time, 6 p.m. I think I don't have anything left to say to you, but thank you for joining me. Thank you for just being there as my lovely audience, as always. And, you know, as already Pichu has mentioned, create, explore, and have loads of fun. Until the next time we see each other, I tell you, Khuda Hafiz!